Good afternoon, students. In our previous classes, we have discussed in brief about the introduction and the history of angiosperm taxonomy. We are now familiar with the definition of taxonomy. Taxonomy is an integrated and intuitive science which involves identification, characterization, classification and naming of the plants. In today's class, we will discuss about the nomenclature of angiospermic plants. This nomenclature, it mainly deals with naming. This nomenclature is nothing but it is a system of naming either plants or animals. If you look at the plant nomenclature is a system of naming plants. In this plant nomenclature, we will be giving a scientific name to the plants. So this is about the definition of nomenclature. Why we have to give scientific name to the plants? There are some reasons why we have to give scientific names to the plants. For example, first one, you might have seen these two plants which are commonly found in our surroundings. If you look at the first one, the scientific name of this plant is Datura stramonium. Datura stramonium. This plant, it belongs to the family Solanaceae. And if you look at the second plant, the scientific name of this plant is Argemone mexicana and it belongs to the family Papaveraceae. Why I am showing these two plants? Because if you look at the common name of these two plants, for the first plant, Datura stramonium, in the southern part of the Karnataka, the common name for this plant is Daturi. For Datura stramonium, the common name in southern part of the Karnataka, they call it as Daturi. If you look at the second plant, that is Argemone mexicana, for this, the common name is also Daturi. In northern part of the Karnataka, they use Daturi as the common name for the second plant. Even though these two plants are different and they belong to two different families, the first one belongs to Solanaceae and the second one belongs to Papaveraceae, but the common name of these two are same. When you have a same common name, it creates lot of confusion among us. So in order to avoid these kind of confusions, we will go for scientific names. This is one example where the common names are same, but the plant species and their families are different. Next, if you look at this plant, this is also commonly found in our surroundings. It's a commonly occurring weed. The scientific name of this plant is Sida acuta and it belongs to the family Malvaceae. If you look at this name which I have given here, before the 18th century, after the Carolus Linnaeus, actually Carolus Linnaeus was the first taxonomist who used the binomial system of nomenclature. Binomial system of nomenclature, it means each plant, the scientific name of a plant will be in binomials. Usually in binomial nomenclature system, you will be having two words. The first part is nothing but the generic name and the second part is specific epithet. Since you are having two words in a name, it is known as binomial. binomial nomenclature. So this binomial nomenclature system was first used by Carolus Linnaeus. So before Carolus Linnaeus, that is before the middle of the 18th century, all the plant names, they were in polynomials. Polynomials means a single plant name will consist of many words. For example, if you take the example of the Sida acuta, the polynomial name which was given before 18th century for this plant, it read as Althea coromandeliana anguistis prolongisa folis semine bicorneo. This is a single name which is given for this plant, that is before 18th century. Why they were given this much long name means the scientists before 18th century, or the taxonomists, they have included the description of this particular plant in the name itself. For example, if you look at this Prolongisa folis semine bicorneo, these are all the Latin words. Prolongisa means prolonged or the long. Folis means leaves. Semine bicorneo means, semine means seed in case of Latin. Semine means seed. Bicorneo means it is having two depressions like this. If you see these seeds here, it has two horn like structures here. That is nothing but the bicorneo nature of these seeds. So all the description which is present in the plant, all those descriptions are included in the name itself in case of polynomials. And again it becomes very difficult for us to remember these polynomials. So in order to avoid these confusions, the binomial system of nomenclature was introduced. So this is about the common names and polynomials which were replaced by binomial system of nomenclature. As I have told you, this binomial nomenclature was first used by Carolus Linnaeus. He is regarded as the father of modern taxonomy, and one of his famous book, that is Species Plantarum, is one of his famous book. In this book he has described about more than 17,500 plants, and in this book Species Plantarum he has followed the binomial nomenclature system. All the scientific names which are given in these books, they follow binomial nomenclature system. That means the scientific name consists of two parts. One is the generic name and the second is specific epithet. Next, coming to the botanical nomenclature. As I have told you, the botanical nomenclature, it always consists of binomials. The scientific name consists of binomials. This was first introduced by Linnaeus, that is in the year 1753. In the year 1753, he has written the book Species Plantarum. In that he has included the binomial nomenclature system. It consists of, first part is a generic name followed by specific epithet. Here I have given the example. Here I have given the scientific name or the botanical name of sunflower. If you look at the botanical name, it reads as Helianthus annuus. This Helianthus is the first part, that is nothing but the generic name, and the annuus is the second part of the name, which is nothing but specific epithet. Helianthus annuus is the scientific name for sunflower. The first part is generic name and the second one is specific epithet. Next, in order to give scientific name to a particular plant, you need to follow some rules and regulations. All the rules and regulations which are required for botanical nomenclature or naming plants are provided by ICBN. This ICBN is nothing but the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. This ICBN, it is nothing but set of rules and recommendations which deals with botanical nomenclature. While naming the plant, you need to follow some rules and recommendations. Those set of rules and recommendations are present in International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. It is nothing but the code which consists of rules and recommendations. And this International Code of Botanical Nomenclature, it was given by International Association of Plant Taxonomy. In this International Association of Plant Taxonomy, the taxonomists all over the world, they will gather every 5 to 6 years for International Botanical Congress. In this International Botanical Congress, either they will modify, they will add, or they will delete rules and regulations for this botanical nomenclature, and they prepare International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. This International Code of Botanical Nomenclature, it was first given in the year 1906. In the year 1906, International Botanical Congress was held in Vienna. That is in 1905 actually. This International Botanical Congress was held in 1905 in Vienna. In this International Botanical Congress, International Code of Botanical Nomenclature was given, and it was given by International Association of Plant Taxonomy. And the recent International Botanical Congress, it was held in 2017. That is, it was held in China, Shenzhen, China. And from 2011, that is, the International Botanical Congress was held in Melbourne. From this International Botanical Congress, they have changed the name of the code from International Code of Botanical Nomenclature to International Code of Nomenclature for Algae, Bryophytes, Pteridophytes, Gymnosperms and Angiosperms. They have changed the name from ICBN to ICN from 2011. That is, from the International Botanical Congress, which is held in Melbourne. They have changed their name from ICBN to ICN. So this is in brief about the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. If you look at the main aims of this ICBN, the main aims of this International Code of Botanical Nomenclature is, the first important aim is to provide a stable method of naming taxonomic groups. While naming a plant, you need to follow some rules and regulations. All those rules and regulations, they are given in International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. If you follow these rules and recommendations, you are able to give a stable naming to the, or a legitimate, a lawful name to a plant. So one of the important aim of this ICBN is, it helps us in providing a stable method of naming taxonomic groups. The next important aim is, this ICBN also helps us to avoid and reject the names which are having confusion, or they are having ambiguity, and which even consists of errors. Using these rules and recommendation, we can delete or we can reject all those names which are causing confusion and which are having errors. And another important aim is, we can avoid some useless creation of names while naming a plant. These are some of the aims of ICBN. Next, another important thing which comes under this ICBN is the principles of ICBN, principles of the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. These principles are very important in view of your examinations. There are 6 principles which are given in ICBN, and they play an important role while naming a plant. Let us see one by one. The first principle of ICBN is, it states that botanical nomenclature is independent of zoological nomenclature. It means while you are naming a plant, you need not follow the rules and regulations which are given in zoological nomenclature system. There are separate set of rules in plant nomenclature which are given by International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. So you need to follow those rules. That's why the botanical nomenclature is independent of zoological nomenclature. And this International Code of Botanical Nomenclature, it applies equally to names of taxonomic groups which are treated as plants. Means the living organisms which are treated as plants, all those living organisms, while naming all those living organisms, you need to follow the rules which are present in ICBN. The botanical nomenclature is independent of zoological nomenclature, and while naming a taxonomic group, you need to follow ICBN. If it is treated as a plant, then you need to follow rules and recommendations given by ICBN. So this is about the first principle. Next one, the application of names of taxonomic groups is determined by means of nomenclature type. These nomenclature types, they are nothing but they act as reference parts of a taxon. It may be in the form of herbaceous sheet, or it may be in the form of a preserved specimen. These nomenclature types, they mainly helps us in permanently attaching a scientific name to a particular plant. They act as references. These nomenclature types are nothing but the references which are preserved in the form of herbarium sheet or preserved specimen, which acts as references while naming a plant. The second principle says that while naming a taxonomic group or while applying names to a taxonomic group, it is mainly determined by nomenclature type. It means to say that while naming a taxonomic group, you need to determine the name by using the nomenclature type. That nomenclature type is nothing but the reference which is available in the form of herbarium or specimen. Next, third principle, the nomenclature of the taxonomic group is based upon priority of publication. This priority of publication is nothing but, for example, if you say that Carolus linnaeus, he has described one particular plant, say XYZ, in 1753 in his book Species Plantarum. So he has published and described about the plant XYZ in 1753 in his book Species Plantarum. Again, you consider that the same plant XYZ was again found and described by another scientist in, for example, you say that 2020. So while considering the scientific name of this particular plant XYZ, you need to consider the name which is published first. For example, the plant name XYZ was first described by Carolus linnaeus in 1753. So you need to consider the name which is given by Carolus linnaeus. You should not consider the name which was given in 2020. This is nothing but the priority of publication. That is nothing but the name which is first published is considered as scientific name for that particular plant, or a scientific name for that taxonomic group. So the nomenclature of the taxonomic group is always based on priority of publication. Next, coming to the fourth principle. Fourth principle states that each taxonomic group with a particular circumscription, position and rank can bear only one correct name, and that name should be the earlier, that is in accordance with the rules except in specified cases. This fourth principle says that each taxonomic group will bear or will consist of only one correct name. There is no multiple names are involved. If, for example, there is a family known as Malvaceae, so all the plants which are present in this Malvaceae are grouped in family Malvaceae. So that Malvaceae consists of only one name. So this fourth principle states that only each taxonomic group with particular circumscription. Particular circumscription is nothing but the detailed description of a plant, position, rank can bear only one correct name. There is no multiple names involved. Each taxonomic group will have only one correct name. Next, coming to the fifth principle. It states that scientific name of taxonomic group are treated as Latin regardless of their derivation. In botanical nomenclature system, while writing a scientific name, you should use the Latinization procedure. Either you should write the scientific name in Latinized form, or if you write it in English or you need to underline the both generic name and the specific epithet. The scientific names of taxonomic groups, they are treated in Latin language only. Why they are treated in Latin language only means because this Latin language is one of the earliest language which is present now. And if you consider this Latin language, most of the early botanical literatures, most of the works which have been carried out, particularly in plant taxonomy, all those botanical literatures, they were written in Latin language. The second reason is, when compared to the other languages, these Latin words are more precise and specific. It means to say that they provide us definite meaning of that particular word. So it is more precise and specific when compared to other languages. And this Latin language was used by all the scholars and students throughout the world. Since it is largely used language, we will be using Latin language as the base for scientific naming. And another important thing is, most of the European languages, they are derived from the Latin language itself, and this Latin language is not used as national language in any of the country. So these are all some of the reasons why we will be using Latin language in scientific naming. So these are all the 6 important principles of International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. And there are some exceptions in these principles, particularly with respect to fourth principle. I told you each taxonomic group will bear only one scientific name, or each taxonomic group will have only one correct name. But here there are some examples which consists of 2 names. For example, the family Compositae, it's now known as Ostraceae. It is used as an alternative name for this. And for family Cruciferae, we will use Brassicaceae as an alternative name. So these are some of the exceptions to the principle 4. Next, coming to the rules of ICBN. Let us see some of the basic rules which you need to follow while giving a scientific name to the plant. I told you the scientific name of a plant will consist of two parts. First one is generic name and the second one is specific epithet. The complete scientific name will include genus and species name, and another important thing is it also should include the name of the scientist who first described the species, and you can also include the year also. Generic name should be there, specific epithet will be there, and followed by the author who described that particular plant. These three things should be there in a scientific name, and the genus and species are written in italics, or where that is not possible, italics writing is not possible, means at that time you can underline both the generic name and the specific epithet. And another important thing is the first letter in the generic name should be in the capital form. You should write it in capital letters, and the remaining you can write it in small letters. So, and the another important thing is all the letters in specific name will be written in small letters. There is no capitalization involved there. So, these are some of the basic rules of ICBN. Next, I told you the name consists of two parts. First, let us see generic name. What are the rules or how the generic name is given? Usually, the name of the genus will always be, or usually it is a noun. A noun may be a name of a person or a city or any place or anything. Usually the genus name will be a noun, and it is always in the singular form. The generic name can be originated or it can be given by many means. For example, one, a genera may be named in honor of a botanist or horticulturist, or it may be given in the name of the scientist or the botanist who has first described that particular plant. For example, you might have heard the name of David Attenborough. He is one of the famous naturalist, and he was the first one who has identified a carnivorous plant, that is Nepenthes. So, the name Nepenthes attenboroughi, it was given in honor of David Attenborough. The generic name can be, here the specific name is given, the specific epithet is borrowed from or it is given in honor of David Attenborough. Similarly, you can use the name of taxonomist who has first described that plant as a generic name while giving scientific name. The second one is the generic name can even be derived from mythological or it can be derived from any poet. For example, Nymphia, this is a name which is actually derived from a poetic background. This Nymphia means it is nothing but lovely water nymphs. The actual meaning of this Nymphia is lovely water nymphs. So, this name is actually derived from a poem. So, like this you can derive generic names either from in honor of a biologist, or you can derive that name from poetic or mythological origin. Next, specific epithet. Similarly, this specific epithet, it is usually an adjective. Generic name is always usually it is a noun, but this specific epithet is an adjective. What is adjective? Adjective means the word which describes the noun. The adjective is nothing but the word which describes the noun. And like generic name, this may also have several origins. For example, the specific epithet can be given in honor of a person. For example, there are several specific epithets which are given the name of hooker, that is hookery. One example, hookery. This name is given in honor of Hooker, Joseph Dalton Hooker, and it can be even derived from a special character also. For example, the specific epithet alba is used. Morus alba, that is nothing but your mulberry tree. The alba is derived from the word, which means to say this alba is nothing but, it consists of white flowered plants. Alba is nothing but, it describes the white color. That's why the name alba is used as specific epithet in some of the scientific names. And not only this, there are several other origins for the specific epithet. For example, even you can use the name of a geographical location. For example, there is a plant called Viscum bundipurensis. This plant belongs to the family Podostamaceae. That Viscum bundipurensis plant was first identified in Bandipur National Park. So it is named as Viscum bundipurensis. The specific epithet name is derived from the geographical location where it was first identified or where it is growing. So these are some of the examples to state that the origin of specific epithet. And there are some more examples which are given in this list. For example, there is a species known as in the first slide I have shown Argemone mexicana. That Argemone mexicana plant, it is native to the Mexico. So while naming the plant, they have derived the specific epithet as Argemone mexicana. They have used the location where it is present. So these are some of the examples, you can refer it later. And another important thing while giving specific epithet name, specific epithet, when you are giving specific epithet in honor of a person, for example, if he is a man, so the specific epithet should end with I or double I. I or double I. Here you can see here. The specific epithet should end with I or double I. For example, you can see here. There are some of the plants which have used specific epithet in honor of a person. Here you can see Agarkarai, Belii. Here the specific epithet name, it is ending with double I or I. If he is a man, then the specific epithet should end with I or double I. If the specific epithet name is derived in honor of a woman, at that time the specific epithet name should end with AE. For example, Margarete, this is specific epithet Margarete, it ends with AE. Similarly, Pearsone, AE. If he is a man, the specific epithet should end with I or double I. If it is woman, it should end with AE. So these are some of the rules while writing or while naming the generic name and the specific epithet, or these are some of the origins where you can derive the specific epithet name. In a scientific name, I told you, it should consist of actually three things. First one is generic name, next specific epithet, and third, you should also write the name of the author who first described that particular plant. For example, Here a plant name is given, scientific name of a plant is given. It is read as Dianthus caryophyllus. This Dianthus caryophyllus, and they have written capital letter L. This capital letter L stands for Linnaeus. Linnaeus was the first taxonomist who described this plant Dianthus caryophyllus. So the generic name and the specific epithet is followed by capital letter L. That L denotes the name of author who described first. Dianthus caryophyllus L. And when you are writing the name of the author, you should follow some rules again. For example, if the name is Linnaeus, that Linnaeus name you cannot write it completely, and you can abbreviate that. Instead of writing the name completely, you can abbreviate that with capital L. Linnaeus. If you write capital L, that is enough. It should be followed by a dot. Dianthus caryophyllus L, followed by a full stop. And for example, you have a list like this which consists of plants belongs to the same genus. For example, Dianthus caryophyllus, Dianthus chinensis, and Dianthus giganteus. So while writing the list like this, if they are all belongs to the same genus, then you need not write all the names completely. For example, first you write Dianthus caryophyllus. Next you need not write Dianthus. Instead of that, you can write just the first letter of that particular genus. Here they have written D, followed by a full stop, then chinensis. Similarly, D full stop, giganteus. So if you have a list of plants which belongs to the same genus, at that time the first name you should write it completely as Dianthus caryophyllus. The names that are followed by the first name, they can be written as just with the capital letter of the first letter of the genus, followed by specific epithet. Next, sometimes you will be knowing only the names of genus, but you do not know the specific epithet. At that time, you can write the name of the plant as Dianthus followed by species, SP followed by full stop. Dianthus species, it denotes as Dianthus species. If it is a single plant, then you can write like this. If there are many plants which belong to that particular genus, at that time you can write it as Dianthus followed by SPP, species. Next, coming to the taxonomic ranks. These taxonomic ranks, they are nothing but the taxonomic hierarchy which you need to follow while classifying a plant. In the previous class, I have explained you about the term taxon. This taxon is nothing but taxonomic group of plant of any rank. For example, here the genus Hibiscus is given. Here the genus Hibiscus is nothing but a taxon. That is nothing but a unit of a taxonomical hierarchy. Similarly, family Malvaceae. Family Malvaceae is a taxon. It's a group. It is a smallest group in taxonomic hierarchy. If you look at the taxonomic hierarchy which is given by Linnaeus, this is the taxonomic hierarchy which you will be following while classifying the plants. First it starts with the kingdom, followed by phylum, class, order, family, genus and species. You need to follow the same sequence while classifying the plants. And even that hierarchy can be modified, like Kingdom is again subdivided into subkingdoms. Subphylum into subphylums. Likewise, all other hierarchies are divided into subgroups also. So this is about the taxonomic hierarchy. And another important thing is the major taxonomic ranks, they end with specific endings. For example, the name of phylum or division, it ends with phyta. For example, Magnoliophyta. Here this phylum Magnoliophyta, it ends with phyta. Next, the name of the class, it ends with Opsida. Magnoliopsida, Opsida, Opsida, it ends with Opsida. Similarly, the name of order ends with Ales, Ales, Magnoliales, or Rosales, like this. It ends with ALES. Similarly, the name of family, it ends with ACA, Magnoliaceae, Rosaceae, Euphorbiaceae. The name of family, it ends with ACA. So these are some of the common endings of the different taxonomic ranks. So in the next class, we will discuss with some of the rules with regarding to the nomenclature.